Hi, my name's Paula from Chic Emporium. Today we're going to look at image transfer and how to do it. There's been a lot on the Chic fan forum about it recently, and I thought I'd have a little experiment in front of you guys and we'll see how we get on. In the past I have used and put on the Chic forum printed off on a normal inkjet printer, normal paper, nothing special, a picture, and being able to transfer it onto something like this or something like this. And it's worked fairly effectively for me. It's not a perfect science, but it has worked. A lot of people have had glitches with it, and today we're going to sort of talk about some of those as we go through the process. So this is an example of a printed off sheet, and it's worth making note that if you're printing anything off with words on, or if you're going to take a memory stick down to a printer's to have it printed for you, that you need to get the words reversed before you start, because otherwise the words will come out backwards when we rub off the back. So make sure that you reverse your print. I get a lot of my images from the Graphics Fairy. You can Google her. It's an amazing site full of duty-free, copyright-free images, and quite often on lots of them she's already reversed them for you, so you can just print them straight off. You can enlarge them to whatever size you want and print them straight off, and all of the pictures are really good quality images, not pixelated or anything, so I totally recommend that as a site. Now today I actually prepared this, and I've been to the printers to print this off, mainly because it was A3 and I couldn't print that off on my normal printer, but also because I wanted to try a laser print and see how it feels different from when I've done the inkjet print. So I've got quite a steampunk theme going on today, which I'm excited about trying. I've prepared the rest of this stool, the bottom half, using lots of different techniques and colours and textures. We started off with Mrs. Brown French Chic, which is the colour you see on the top. We've gone on to use some pumpkin pie, and I've then finished off with lots of Frenchines, gold, coppers and bronze and silvers all mixed in here to create some kind of coppery textured effect. I will be blending the top half in to match it, but first of all I want to get the transfer image in situ. Now I'm not sure altogether today how effective this is going to be at transferring, because this background colour is brown. So that's the experiment part as far as I'm concerned. In the past I've had much more success transfer imaging onto white directly. And we have this other stool prepared, which we've decided on a white background to just compare the two in effectiveness by the end of the session. So we will see. So I'm hoping it will work, but if it doesn't, we'll have to have a plan B. So what we need to do is use finishing coat, which I've got a little pot for here, and we're going to put the finishing coat on both surfaces, a nice, easy, liberal coat. It's very runny in consistency. So just make sure that you've spread right round to all of the edges, like so. It'll work quite quickly, because as soon as the paper gets wet it wants to bubble, and then you also apply it liberally to your surface you want to stick it to. All over. It doesn't matter if you go outside the edges, because it's going to dry matte. Just to make sure it's completely covered. There. So now I'm going to take my image and very quickly, while it's still wet, place it down in position. Now I'm going to just smooth it out from the middle, making sure I get rid of all the rumples, because just like wallpaper, as soon as it's wet it's starting to bubble up. One little tip is using an old credit card, plastic card, just to smooth out the edges, making sure in particular that the edges are done. It doesn't matter if some of the finishing coat squirts out, we can wipe that off. Now it's recommended from every bit of research I've done on the subject to leave your project overnight to dry, properly dry. But I've run workshops on transfer images, and obviously we can't leave a project overnight, and we've used hair dryers and just blasted it till it's absolutely bone dry, and I've had no problems at all. So that's what I'm going to do today, is use a hair dryer. It's really helping smooth it out. What I did find when I used the normal inkjet printer on this cupboard was that some areas, as you can see there, didn't come out so well, and some areas just were a bit patchy. And all I did to cover that was, like I showed in my previous video, using a stippling brush, added some other colours to just blend it in, so it looked like it was almost deliberately done. It didn't look like it had all gone wrong. I think that works really well. Right, what we need to do now is dry this with a hairdryer, so I'll pop back in a bit. I'm just now going to apply the other image that I've got, which is equally steampunk, to the other stool, which we've decided today we're going to try onto the white, just to see if it comes out better or worse. So we're going to do exactly the same as we did with the last one. Fairly liberal coat, making sure the edges are coated. It's the substance that's on the papers actually feels a little bit resistive to it, but it will take it. So that's why we're putting it on both sides. So that's on the colour image, and I'm going to lift it up and quickly put it on the stool as well. Just one last to make sure we've got enough. Place it down as centrally as I can. Yep. First of all, push it down with my fingers. I need to smooth out these wrinkles, so I'm going to go back to my card because I think that's really effective. Now this is certainly absolutely fine on this paper. I imagine that the normal paper you use in your printer at home is slightly thinner, so you might have to be a little bit more careful about smoothing it out if you use one of these cards, because you don't want to tear the paper. Of the finishing coat that's squeezed out, which is absolutely fine. It means that you've got no air pockets, because if it's not completely stuck absolutely everywhere, the image won't come out in that place, so you need it to be. There. Right, we'll get to drying with the hairdryer and then we'll report back. Right, so we've blasted it with a hairdryer within an inch of its life. It's now very, very warm and very, very dry. So now we start the rather laborious, if I'm honest, procedure of adding water to the back of the paper, and we're going to be rubbing gently in circles to remove the paper. It will gradually go bitty in your fingers and you'll be able to feel it, and actually the bits seem to help rub off the rest of it. It does take time, because if you rush it or you're too hard, you're going to take the picture off as well, and we don't want to do that. We only want to take the back of the paper off, not the image. I think we can slowly see there the image revealing itself. Ooh, how exciting. Now while I'm carrying on doing this, watching, and you can watch me gradually reveal this picture, I want to talk a little bit more about the inkjet printing. From reports that I've had, it would seem it's important to print it out the night before and allow the print to properly dry. And some of my artisans have reported issues if they haven't done this, that the print doesn't seem to have taken so well and it's peeled off when they've started this process. So the night before seems to be in order. This was printed out yesterday, this picture. I don't know if the same applies with laser printed, but this was printed out yesterday. Now you can see even there some of the images coming away. I think you should set out with each of these projects not expecting it to be perfect, because you'll be disappointed. It isn't an exact science. When I printed out my images, I used my printer, which is a Kodak printer, and I use proper Kodak ink. One of my workshop ladies came back to me and said she'd had a further go following a workshop using her printer, which she uses cheap replica ink for her printer, which lots of people do, but again it didn't work as well. So I don't know if the fact that I use the proper Kodak ink is why it worked. So I think there's probably lots of variables and lots of trials and errors. Quite messy. See, pretty much finished. There are a few kind of cloudy looking areas, and they show up more as it starts to dry, and you'll find when you put water back on it you can't see them as well, but they show up for a reason, to let you know that there's still a little bit more paper on the backing that needs to be rubbed off. So you can keep coming back to it for a little while and rub off the last bits, and the colour will come through more and more solid. So I shall continue rubbing away at this for a little while just to get rid of the cloudy bits that you can see. But as you can see, even with this laser paper, there are some areas that have just come away straight away. So it's leaving a kind of patchy, distressed look, which I'm happy with. I expected. I think all in, it's a success even on the dark paper. But look, see what happens when I put water back on it, it goes dark again. So there's still a bit more paper to come off. I'm going to carry on with this, finish it off, and then I'm going to get the back off the other one and we'll see how they compare. I'll pop back in a bit. Right, so now we've got both off. I think you can see that this one's popping a lot more than this one, and I think that's purely because it's on a white background. In a way it looks a bit too bright, but it's not the end of the story, because we are going to be blending the top section into the legs, and I think obviously despite best efforts we've got some patches where the pictures come off, You could choose to just leave it. It doesn't show quite as much on this one because the background colour is more in keeping with it. But I think in both of them we're going to do some more fine artwork to blend it in and incorporate it as part of the stall. So we'll move on and do that and then show you the finished product. My general view is that there isn't much difference at all in using the laser printed paper and using inkjet paper. Neither have been secure, neither of them have been perfect. So obviously I needed to go to the printers for this because it was too big for what I have at home to print, but I don't think there's much difference in the quality. Right, I just thought I'd run through for you quickly how I was planning on blending this in, and my most precious tool is my stencil stippling brush, which is just so good for dabbing, blending lots of different colours together. And it's a lot of how I've got this technique on the side, is using lots of colours and this very brush. So I'm going to be, this will be pumpkin pie on top of Mrs. Brown, and then this is, hello Chalky, this is a gold and silver mix with the finishing coat, again using a stippling brush to give it some texture, and I'll be blending it all in. I'm also going to use a very small brush with the gold, I think, to pick out some of the time marks that are on here and maybe the circle, just to bring it all in and give it a bit of a pop. And this one again, I need to go back with the anguilla, fill in the white here and blend in around the edges. I may or may not do a little bit of stippling around these patches that have shown through. So that's the plan, and you'll be able to see the finished product when I've done it. Lastly, my last tip for the day is wet wipes. We did find when we were using the inkjet printers that sometimes, particularly when you've got a very black image, it became, especially if it got a bit wet, that it smudged a bit and got a bit dirty and a bit smudgy as the ink was coming off, and these baby wipes were just brilliant for cleaning it up and wiping up the areas that were smudgy. So now it looks really quite clean. I've gone on with a stippling brush again with the base colour to just blend out the edges to give it a nice oldie worldy feel.
Was only true in fairy tales, and for someone else, but not for me. Our love was out to get me, that's the way it seemed. Disappointment haunted all my dreams. Then I saw her face, now I'm a believer. Not a trace of doubt in my mind. I'm in love.
Thank you for watching. I hope you've learned something today, and I would love to see what you managed to do with this technique. Please follow my page, which is www.facebook.com/The Emporium Furniture, which will take you straight to Fairy Chic Emporium. Thank you for your continued support.